Nissan's fortune in India finally seem to be on an upward trend thanks to this car, the Magnite B SUV. Now, one of the things that we really like about this car is its new 1-litre HRE turbo petrol engine. On paper, it looks extremely capable, but how does it perform in the real-world conditions? Well, that's what we are here to find out with a series of tests which we will put the car through today. And here are the parameters that we'll be undertaking. Before we begin, here's a little recap about the Nissan Magnite. Launched in December of 2020, Nissan's B-segment sub-4-meter SUV is available in 20 variants, 2 engine and gearbox options and across 8 color schemes. Prices currently range from Rs 6.04 lakh to Rs 10.71 lakh on road Delhi. For all the details on the Nissan Magnite, do visit our website CarWale.com. Now, most of this review is focused on performance of the Nissan Magnite. If you want to know more about the exterior and interior design as well as the features, you can check out our first drive review, link to which is in the description below. Our first parameter is to test refinement, and that begins with what the car sounds like when you crank it from off. At idling, you can notice a thrummy vibe in the background. You can also feel vibrations on the steering wheel as well as the gear lever. On the go, the shift action feels hard, the clutch also feels heavy. Also, the shifts are quite long in the throw, making this a kind of effort when you need to drive the car enthusiastically. While insulation is just about acceptable for a car of this size and category, in terms of filtering out external sounds, it's not entirely a silent drive, as you still do hear the engine clattering along with an audible whine as you slow down for a stoplight or in traffic. Getting up to 3-digit speeds doesn't take much effort despite the 1-litre turbo's small size. However, the engine is quite audible at these kind of speeds and it will take some getting used to. And what's more, the vibrations increase significantly as you go faster. Magnite is underpinned by McPherson struts in front, a twin-tube telescopic setup at the rear, and rides on 195 by 60 section tires with R16 wheels. In terms of ride quality, you can hear the suspension do its thing if you hit a pothole too hard or approach a speed breaker too fast, but go with a bit of caution and it manages to absorb and dampen without sending much back into the cabin. In our next test, we are looking at the all-important acceleration to figure out the drivability for this engine. Now, if you take outright acceleration, which in this case is the 0 to 100 time, it's not a true measure of the drivability of this engine. What we want to measure true drivability is in-gear acceleration figures. First up, the Nissan Magnite completed the 0 to 100 kmph sprint in 10.28 seconds. The equivalent Hyundai Venue with a 1-litre GDI turbo did the same sprint in 11.49 seconds, while a closer in pricing Maruti Suzuki Swift petrol manual did the same in 12.26 seconds. It should, however, be noted that the Swift petrol engine is a naturally aspirated mill, and also the conditions under which the cars were tested varies as they were tested at different times. Like we said earlier, hitting the 100 kmph mark is just one part of what we're looking at. What we want are in-gear acceleration figures for this 1-litre turbo petrol and 5-speed manual gearbox combination. In the 20 to 80 kmph sprint in third gear, the Magnite completed the test in 11.08 seconds, while the equally important 40 to 100 kmph sprint in fourth gear was achieved in 15.32 seconds. Given that first gear is extremely short, you will more often than not find yourself shifting to second even if you have to make a little progress. At city speeds, third gear is your best friend as you get access to a large chunk of torque there. Out on the highway, the Magnite's relatively light mass of 1041 kgs means the engine doesn't have to strain to lug the car around, and apart from noticeable vibrations, the car needs very little coaxing to constantly do your bidding at 3-digit speeds. As we said before, The 0 to 100 kmph sprint was achieved in 10.28 seconds. We also decided to see how the engine would handle a full load and decided to put 4 people in the car, the size of an average Indian family that would buy a car of this size and category. At city speeds and with 4 people in the car, very little strain was felt on the engine. However, start climbing a hill and if you haven't built up the momentum, you are going to notice the engine straining to pull the load. The clutch on the test car was quite hard with a very late bite point, and this means if you have to do a hill start, the car will jump forward when you are trying to gain momentum. Its massive 205 mm ground clearance means even with a full load, the car does not bottom out. In terms of safety, things like traction control and EBD are quite important, but most basic parameter in terms of safety is braking. The Nissan Magnite gets discs at front and drums at the rear. ABS is standard across all variants. So we tested the Magnite for braking and it did good, traveling 28.48 meters when we dropped the anchors from 80 kmph, and it stopped in 3.19 seconds. Under hard braking, the Magnite stopped progressively with good initial bite, but with the front end having a tendency to dive a certain amount. We were also able to navigate our way around obstacles due to the ABS kicking in quickly and freeing the wheels for easy mobility. On our 40-point scale, the Magnite scored a total of 29 out of 40, or in percentage terms, 72.5 out of 100. Its strongest score came from the acceleration test, where it scored 8.5 out of 10. A part of this is down to the 1-liter turbo petrol engine's peppy nature, where it displayed an eagerness to gain speed, but also due to the lightweight nature of the car by itself. On the other end of the scale is Refinement, where the Magnite scored 6 out of 10. The vibrations are omnipresent and there is a noticeable road and tire noise, especially if you are on a concrete road. It should be noted here that we assess the Magnite relative to its segment and price bracket, and in that respect, it has scored really well among the competition. Here then are the final figures for the Nissan Magnite in terms of real world numbers. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.